ตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Good evening and blessings to you all. Nowadays we're getting used to being out of lockdown here in Victoria, Australia. It's a chance for people to return to the monastery to visit, make donations, listen to the Dhamma. And perhaps it's a good opportunity to take stock of your own personal practice and faith in the Triple Gem. If you think about it, the Buddha's teachings, the Dhamma, has been around since the time of the Buddha's enlightenment, over 2,500 years ago. And these teachings, we say, are timeless. We just chanted that, akaliko, they're timeless, because they point to the truth, and the truth is timeless, because the truth is the truth. And you think, how many, say, global pandemics has the Dhamma been through? If it was a person, it's not, but if it was a person, we're just emerging from one pandemic in Australia. It's still raging around the world. But the teachings of the Buddha have been here for all that time, and they've been through many cycles of plague, various viruses, coronaviruses, Spanish flu, all kinds of things, bird flu, many different diseases, and the Dhamma still is true and valuable to us, and it hasn't been changed or affected by these different experiences of suffering that human beings unfortunately go through from time to time. And that's why if you have faith in the Dhamma and then you practice the Dhamma, it can be a great source of strength and inspiration in your life when you do meet with difficulties, whether it's on a global level like a pandemic or just personal difficulties of living in the world, aging, sickness and death, problems of earning a living and getting on with other people and so on. Dhamma is a great strength because it's been tested over and over and over again by the events of the world and not found wanting. The Dhamma is still effective today and can still awaken our minds to the truth. So at this time you can maybe see the value of having some faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, because this is what leads on to us putting forth effort into the practice. When you begin practice, part of your faith is maybe in the central teaching of Kamma. That was certainly true for me, and I know many other Buddhists the same. If you come across Buddhism, whether from birth or through books or going on a meditation retreat or whatever way, the central teachings about karma and the causal nature of our existence it runs through, it's a theme running through the whole of the Buddhist teachings. And so part of our faith is an acceptance, at least as a premise, that karma is true. it's an accurate way of describing human experience. Karma is volitional action, and the kind of karma, the kind of results that come from our actions are determined by the quality of the volition or the intention. So skillful, good intentions lead on to skillful results, good results, and unskillful intentions lead to bad results or suffering. And the more one inclines to contemplate karma and practice in accordance with it, the more, say my experience is that the more it becomes true. You see it, the process of karma at work. Some of the details and the workings of karma are sometimes beyond comprehension. Like any good theory, you have to accept a certain amount of it on the theoretical level first, and then just keep applying one's practice and contemplation to the theory, and little by little bits of it are revealed perhaps. So particularly, say, in the West, we're not brought up in a Buddhist culture where we do have, nowadays we are exposed to the word karma more and more often, and the sense of there maybe is some truth to this process of cause and result, cause and effect. But we're not steeped in it, we're not surrounded by it, say, as you might be if you're brought up in a Buddhist country, say in Asia. So it's natural that people are a little bit skeptical about some aspects of karma, like past lives, future lives, how does it work? But one important thing is read more, read the suttas, read the teachings, the words of the Buddha, because people in the time of the Buddha had exactly the same kind of doubts and skepticism, and there are other theories and ways that religious teachers explained how existence is, how we come to suffer, how we came to be here. And the same kind of questions were coming up then as they are now. So the Buddha often would have to answer these questions. So he'd point out when some people had the determinist view that everything that happens to us is predetermined, predestined, no way out. If it's going to be good, it's going to be good. If it's bad, it's bad. There's nothing you can do about it. And the Buddha said, well, that's a wrong view, because it's only one factor. What you've done before in your life is only one factor that it's affecting the present moment. Another huge factor is what you're doing in the present moment, what you're thinking, your current karma, your current intentions and actions through body, speech and mind. They also have a huge impact. So he refuted that, said no, not everything is predetermined. And so the astrologers can only give you a general view of what may or may not happen in your life. They can't be 100% accurate because they can't know exactly what you'll do from moment to moment, what your intentions will be, what choices you'll make. Or other people in the time of the Buddha had the view, everything is random. It doesn't matter what you do, it's random, it's out of your control. So you can say, get rich and be happy and in any way you can, because it doesn't matter, it's all random. But the Buddha said, well, no, it's not all random, because what you do does matter. It comes back to you. This sense of cause and effect. But it's not all predetermined, and not everything is personally created by you through your karma either. We're also affected by other factors. So environment has a big effect on our experience of happiness and suffering in life. The weather, the environment, what other people are doing around us. There are these other factors that are not directly coming from our own actions or our past actions. They're also just kind of indirect factors which will affect our experience from day to day, moment to moment in our life. So the Buddha encouraged us to look into this teaching of karma and put it to the test. because it reveals so much about the causes of our happiness or suffering as we go through life. Another thing he said to look at, and why we practice a lot of mindfulness and investigation of the Dhamma, developing the ability to reflect on and contemplate our experience, is that every moment you are experiencing the results of past karma coming up in what has gone before, but then you're also making fresh karma in every moment. So that's two different things. And then also that karma you're making from moment to moment, some of the effects it has are immediate. So this is why people find the practice of mindfulness, meditation and development of the Eightfold Path often so liberating, and so brings them such a quick change and quick insight in their life, because they realize, just thinking a skillful thought already brightens your mind in that moment. Bringing up mindfulness, making the effort to bring up mindfulness in the present moment changes your experience in that moment. And similarly, holding on to a negative thought in the present moment, bringing up that negative thought, holding on to it, developing it, will bring some discontent, some pain, some suffering, more or less depending on the strength of your intention. But in the present moment already it will have a result. That doesn't mean to say some aspects of karma aren't also ripening in the future, and that's often where people find doubt arising. When will my karma ripen? All this good I've done, why hasn't it ripened yet? Or how come that person got away with so much bad karma? I don't see it ripening for them. I don't see them suffering from all the bad things they've said and done. So the way karma ripens, that is something that is a little mysterious. Sometimes it's clearer to us, sometimes it's not. But the Buddha talked about this, how karma ripens, and some karma ripens quickly, some slowly. But in every moment that you have a moment of volitional thought, already some karma is made mentally, and we experience the fruits of that. And then later on there may also be other fruits to be experienced. So when we practice meditation, you're looking at that very process and seeing how, as you develop more clarity, alertness, clear comprehension, understanding, you're seeing what I keep thinking is affecting me. If you keep thinking more useful things, skillful things, rooted in, we say, non-greed, non-anger, non-delusion, your mind opens up and feels happier for it, and it leads on to good things. If you keep thinking and holding on to negative thoughts rooted in greed, anger, delusion, you keep suffering. And the practice of meditation is exposing that truth to us all the time, which is why developing meditation and then developing an understanding of karma tend to go hand in hand. My teacher Ajahn Kalyano used to say, whenever you do something, always do it wholeheartedly. And he said that for a reason. One is because when you do something wholeheartedly, you really become clear of what your intention is, and the karma you're making becomes clearer to you. I think he would have been also meaning, do good things wholeheartedly with a full intention, as opposed to doing bad or evil things. But still, making your intention really clear from moment to moment in what you're doing in your day, in your life, is a very important part of practice, because you're becoming aware of your mind. Like the Buddha said, the ability to reflect, like holding a mirror up and looking back at your mind, is a big part of developing the mind, developing the path. And we all want to experience peace and happiness. So developing the ability to look back at our mind, holding up that mirror, or looking at the reflection of the mind, is an important part of that. And so doing things with clear intention and being clear about your intention will help you to train your mind. And of course, we haven't all been practicing for, perfectly for many years. We've practiced some and we've let the mind go some. So there'll be plenty of times as we come to practice meditation or put Buddhist teachings into practice in our daily life. There'll be those times where it seems difficult, hopeless, because our mind is rooted in many old habits. So you start meditating, for example, and you start with the best intention. I'm going to be mindful of my breath and overcome all the distracting thoughts and sleepiness. And for a while, maybe you maintain that with effort, bringing out mindfulness, letting go of different thoughts. But then perhaps at some point your effort fades, weakens, mindfulness slips, and you become distracted. We all know that experience. And the mind is no longer mindful, no longer aware, and we go back into some of these old habits. Negativity, sometimes anger, worry, desire, sensual desire, sleepiness, and so on, what we call the 5 hindrances. They come back, they re-emerge after maybe a period of effort in our meditation, take over. And often that is a point where we get disappointed because it's not working to our satisfaction. We aren't meeting our goals. So we have to be very patient with this, but also understand what is going on. And you reflect on your mental states and see, these are old habits. Often these are ruts or deep furrows, trenches that we've fallen into maybe for many years, and it's only natural that they'll keep re-emerging. But now that we're practicing mindfulness, we're seeing the karma of what's gone on in the past. But one of the positive sides of our practice is that, a moment of mindful awareness arising, even if it's becoming mindful of being angry or being sad, depressed, being caught up in some kind of sensual desire, a moment of mindfulness is a brightening of the mind. And this kind of insight and understanding is happening over and over again for somebody who does practice the Buddhist path, and particularly is training in meditation. The Buddha compared it to the bright moon, like in a couple of days we'll have a full moon. And the full moon, when it comes out from the clouds, you see the full beauty, radiance of the full moon, having been previously obscured by the clouds, now it's out. He says that's that kind of insight where you establish mindfulness, if only for a few moments, and your negative thoughts pass away, drop away, because you become mindful and you see the suffering of those negative thoughts. You're willing to drop them. The other part of our faith in the Buddhist path, not just having faith in the law of karma and the teaching of karma, but it's also having faith in one's own ability to practice with this law of karma and do exactly that, to develop skillful states of mind rooted in clarity, mindfulness, wisdom, kindness, compassion, generosity, and so on. Many, many good qualities. We always have the ability to bring those up, develop them, cultivate them, bring them up where they weren't there before, or if they have been there already, to develop them further. We have that ability as human beings. So part of faith and the motivation to practice in Buddhism is coming from that acceptance that I can practice what the Buddha taught. And the Buddha himself always said, I wouldn't teach you things that you can't practice. It's because human beings can practice this, they can develop this path of awakening, mindfulness, clarity, wisdom, that he taught it. He was wise enough probably not to waste his time teaching something that people can't understand, can't do. But he didn't say it was easy. He said it was something that takes effort. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges in the practice is learning how to keep summoning up effort to practice, to bring up mindfulness awareness, to reflect on what's going on in our mind. Because again, it's another one of these ruts we've got into in the past probably that you'll be becoming aware of, is that we also like to just take it easy or give up or go to sleep in our practice. Especially when things seem difficult, we take the easy way often and just seek distraction away from that negative mind state that's bothering us, rather than try and establish mindfulness and understand it and see it as something temporary that can be let go of. We often just seek distraction, kind of suppress it by looking for something more interesting, more pleasurable, or just to take us away from the present moment, which is maybe not so pleasurable, not so interesting, not so to our satisfaction. We just want to escape. So we have to deal with that, this desire to give up the practice, throw away some of the good qualities we have been developing and go back to more coarser, unskillful states of mind. That dynamic is going on all the time. So this is why Ajahn Chah said, get in the habit of doing things wholeheartedly. He'd give that teaching, say, when somebody, say a monk, was sweeping leaves, and perhaps he could sense that the monk was a bit grumpy, sweeping leaves again on a hot day, dusty, hot, sweaty. Maybe doing a job that's repetitive and not that interesting to you is the sort of time where you need to bring up this quality of doing it wholeheartedly, doing it mindfully, understanding what you're doing. Even a very mundane, repetitive job like sweeping leaves, when done with the right attitude, with a wholesome state of mind, is good karma. And you think how many kind of boring, repetitive jobs we do in the course of our day, all of them can become a part of the path, can become something good if we bring the right attitude and bring up effort as we're doing them. Or as Ajahn Chah would say, doing them wholeheartedly. Doesn't always mean doing great acts of service or sacrifice for other people either. Just doing ordinary mundane chores and mundane activities. Could be just walking along the road, but doing it wholeheartedly, mindfully, knowing what you're doing in the present moment and learning to look after your mind in the present moment. Weeding out some of these negative thoughts, or the 5 hindrances that we talk about in meditation. And just like a garden, if we don't do it, well, the weeds just keep coming back and they gradually suffocate the plants that you want, the flowers or the bushes, whatever it is. If we don't do the weeding, then they get completely covered over time. If we let the garden go, then after a while it's unmanageable and it doesn't look very good. Our mind is the same. We really have to learn how to keep summoning up effort. But this is effort based on understanding and faith in the law of karma and the efficacy of it. And this teaching of karma does seem to be true and work, and it is worthwhile bringing up the path factors from moment to moment through our day, and bringing up a moment of mindfulness, restraining the impulse to be angry or greedy or selfish, wakening the mind out of drowsiness or delusion. It's always good karma, so it will always lead on to good results, and some of those results are experienced instantly. So if you have learned meditation, maybe it'll be as simple as remembering your meditation object at a time when you're feeling stressed. So if that may be the breath, and just pausing, go into the breath when your mind is caught up in some anger or worry, and at that moment experiencing the freedom, the liberation of letting the negative thoughts go and just staying with something that brings up mindfulness, say the breath. And the breath is fairly neutral, it doesn't bring any sense of stress with it. It's just becoming mindful of the breath, your mind becomes wholesome and you drop the unwholesome thoughts at that time. So just as we in the past maybe have developed a few bad habits, mental habits and trains of thought that keep reoccurring and are very tiresome to deal with, but we can keep developing good habits and keep developing this quality of mindful awareness and then wise reflection and train our minds and develop these good habits, and those become more natural to the mind as well. So your mind might naturally incline towards reflecting on Dhamma, practicing mindfulness more and more, the more you practice, and that's how karma works. Thinking about the pandemic, and how these teachings of Buddhism have helped so many generations of people since the time of the Buddha up till now, through world history, you might say. Even like there's a monk here sitting on our shrine. One of the monk, you can't see him on your screen, I don't think, but to my right, or you'll see it to the left, is a monk, statue of a monk we have called Lumpur Tuat. And Lumpur Tuat was somebody who lived about 300 years ago in Thailand, but he's still remembered today. He's like a household name in Thailand, a Buddhist country, because he made a great contribution to the practice of Buddhism at a time when Buddhism was fairly weak. The country was very undeveloped 300 years ago. But Lumpur Tuat was a very wise, compassionate monk. He's considered to be a bodhisattva. And he put great effort into teaching, training Sangha throughout Thailand, teaching the Dhamma, spreading the Dhamma, the good Dhamma. So he oversaw a revival of Buddhism during his lifetime, and he's remembered partly for that. And then one of the things he was remembered for was there was actually a plague in Thailand at that time, about 300 years ago. So not much different from today, coronavirus days, but in those days obviously there was a lot less technology and information available. But he's remembered for having developed, in conjunction with local herbal doctors, a remedy for the kind of plague that was coming through Thailand, and it seemed to be fairly effective, and so he got the recipe to many people, made up this medicinal treatment for the plague, and got it distributed, and is attributed with saving many lives and reducing the suffering of large numbers of people, thousands, tens of thousands of people. But something he is famous or well known for is, teaching people to be patient with their karma, not just to give in, say in the face of disease, epidemics, or the other kinds of difficulties we face because of our karma. We sometimes we have to face economical difficulties, lack of money, the stresses of living with other people, conflicts over wealth, property, rivalries. Nowadays our rivalries maybe are more like online reputation, social media, things like that. But in those days maybe it was, reputation would still be something that people would have conflicts over. But teaching people, encouraging people to practice patience and develop good karma to overcome bad karma. Buddhists, as anyone else in the world, often have this dream that, if I could just wipe away, get rid of all my old karma, kind of wash it away, things will be good. So they're always looking for the monk who'll, bless them, or praying to the gods to bless them, or get some lucky charm, or get something or other, maybe a good reading from the astrologer, something that will just help them to wipe away all their old karma. So Lumpur Tuat spent a lot of time teaching people, this isn't the right way to go about it. You can't change the past. You can't wipe away the past. And you have to accept, the kind of karma, the habits you've built up in your life up to this point, they're true. These things have happened. So if you've made some mistakes or developed some skillful habits in the way you speak, act, or just thinking mentally. You can't just wash that all away through a ceremony or a ritual. He would encourage people to reflect on karma and patiently apply these teachings so that you're developing good karma to overcome bad karma, meaning changing the way you think in different situations. If previously, when things don't go so well, you get angry, you get upset, or you feel sad, depressed, or you seek distraction and you act in maybe more selfish, unskillful ways, to recognize that is not the best way to deal with your old karma. Better to face it with patience, mindfulness, and develop new skillful karma in the midst of the fruits of your old negative karma. He said, this is the way you change the whole direction of your life, the course of your life. And human beings can do this. So this is another thing he's remembered for. 300 years ago in Thailand, they didn't have photographs and historical records, or social media, or any of the things we have now. So it's amazing that his name is still remembered in this day and age, but it is by many, many people. For this kind of contribution, just getting people to see that the basic Buddhist teachings really work if you apply them. If you have that faith to try them out, really apply them. So say you meet with some difficulty in your life, which we all do from time to time. You make a mistake, a big mistake with your work, or you have a problem in your relationship, or you lose some money, or you lose your job, or you have your relationship is going down the hill. Come back to the basic Buddhist teachings rather than dwelling on your mistakes, feeling guilty, remorseful, angry with yourself, or mucking up. Come back to re-establishing wholesome karma in the present moment. So where before you were caught into anger and negativity, try to bring up goodwill, forgiveness. As simple as that, changing the way you think from one opposite to another. That's good karma at work, and in a very brief period of time can change your whole outlook and experience of life. If you've made a big mistake, in your studies or your work, and it's had serious consequences for you, well, if it's happened, you can't change the past. But how you look at the past in the present moment, say when memories of it come up, that you can change. So instead of getting caught into the guilt, self-criticism, dwelling on that, use what you've learned from the past, the mistakes or the misfortunes you've been through, to establish good karma in the present moment, a more skillful way of thinking, more good intentions in the present moment that you can build on rather than dwelling on the past and the negativity, the guilt, the self-criticism. That's to be let go of. We can learn from the past, of course, but then we have to let it go because you can't change it. And more important is what kind of karma you're making in the present, right now. So Luang Por Tuat was somebody who would have been good to have around in the pandemic this year, wouldn't he? Because he both could provide good medicine and also good teaching, good Dhamma to deal with pandemics. There's one of the values you get from Sangha, staying close to practitioners of the Dhamma who have committed themselves to the Dhamma practice. You might say they're living the Dhamma, and whether it's Luang Por Tuat or any other Luang Por or monks and nuns in Australia or anywhere else in the world, when you draw close to those who have dedicated their time, their lives to the Dhamma, you'll get very good examples of how to practice, how to bring up good karma, good intentions, good wholesome karma in the face of difficulty. It's one of the things that the monastic life brings out in people. It brings out extra commitment, extra effort, patience and endurance, and then the experience of working with the human mind and all its weaknesses and foibles, and then going beyond some of them. So staying close to Sangha is another way we get inspired and get some strength to deal with karmic problems that come up. When I was a young monk, I remember in Thailand, in Thailand, as a forest monk, you hear lots of stories, amazing stories about different teachers. One teacher who was a friend of Lumpur Liam, who is the head of our Sangha, who's still alive, was Lumpur Somchai, who lived at Wat Khao Sukhim. And he liked to talk a lot about karma and the fruits of karma and how to change your karma for the better, getting beyond some of the hindrances and the difficulties that we go through. He said he had a really good lesson when he was had been a monk just in his first year as a monk. He was, in those days, this is maybe 100 years ago or 80 years ago in Thailand. So healthcare was very sparse, very rare, not much healthcare out in the rural areas. There's a lot of disease, a lot of poverty. So forest monks often had a very hard time of it, very little support, not much food, and exposed to many diseases. So he caught malaria, and a very serious strain of malaria. Even though he was young and healthy when he got it, it almost killed him. And he didn't get much treatment for it. He just got rest. He was in his hut in a small hermitage monastery, resting, and he could hardly eat. All he could do was just sip a little bit of water, and eventually got to the point where he was became unconscious. And he says he had what you might call a near-death experience or a death experience where he temporarily died for a short period. And the reason this experience stuck in his mind, obviously he recovered to tell the story later, and he told it a few times in his life. During that period where he almost died, or did die temporarily, his mind separated from the body. And he had the experience of, as if somebody had, when they die, you probably hear the stories, what happens. Well, some people say you see a light at the end of a tunnel, some people say you see nothing. Well, for him, he had the experience of his mind going up to a heaven realm and meeting a deva, an angel in the heaven realm, who showed him around that heaven realm while he was temporarily dead. And they said they showed him to a little heavenly mansion, a small heavenly mansion, quite small, and not that well, not that shiny and bright, not as good as some of the other heavenly mansions that were around that he could see. So he's asking the deva, he said, you brought me to this small little mansion, why is that? And they said, this is where, when you die, this is where you're going to live in your next life. You've made enough merit, enough good karma to be reborn in a heaven realm, and you'll live in this kind of accommodation. And he said, it looks pretty small. I can see everyone else around here has got a much bigger one. I'm a Buddhist monk, I've done some good, and I've made a lot of merit in my short life. I've helped build things. I even helped build a kuti for Lumpur Man, the great meditation master. That must be worth something. And the deva said, yeah, it's all true. You've done all these things, but you never really put your heart in it. You didn't do it wholeheartedly. A lot of the good things you did was just following on because other people were doing it. You didn't really put your heart in it. Didn't really have that clear, good karma, good karmic intention. Sometimes you're just following others, following the crowd. Sometimes you're even forced. When you're a layman, you went to the temple only because your mum forced you to go, because she said it would be good for you. You didn't really want to go. So even though you participated in many things, good things, your heart wasn't fully in it. So you didn't make the full merit, the full good karma in those experiences. And so that's reflected in the size of the heavenly mansion you'll get. But luckily he didn't die. He eventually woke up, he came back to his body, but he could remember this. And it sounds just like a dream, and you might say, it's just a dream. But later on in his life, we believe Lumpur Somchai became a very wise, compassionate meditation master, and people trusted that he wasn't deluded, lost in his imagination. And when he told this story, it's coming from a place of wisdom and understanding about karma and how the level of your intention and the intensity of your intention is always important when you do things. If you only do things in a half-hearted way, even if they're good, it's not the same as when you really do something with full commitment, mindfulness, awareness, good intention. So that's one of the benefits of living in Thailand. So you get to hear a lot of these stories, and obviously in a non-Buddhist country you might be very skeptical. It just sounds like imagination, and who's to say? But because it is coming from a monk who developed his practice very well, and I met him in my lifetime, I felt confident that he wasn't pulling our leg when he said that story, wasn't deluded. There was some truth to it. But you can get the point that karma, the heart of karma is intention, the quality of your intention. So sometimes we're even, say, doing something good superficially, like meditating, or doing an act of goodness, building a kuti, offering some food, helping somebody out, doing something that's ostensibly seems good on the outside, but then you also have to look at the quality of your intention as you're doing that act. Is your mind really there? And you'll see, even meditating, your mind can be miles away. As we all know, the mind can drift away and it's not mindful at all. It's not in a wholesome state at all. It can be full of anger, full of worry, full of greed, sleepy. So coming back to what kind of karma am I making at this moment is a kind of a reflection we can train ourselves to develop, whether it is in meditation or just going through our day. Many people say you go to work, and you only love your parts of your job, you don't like the whole of it. So you're often feeling some negative thoughts when you're doing your job of work. Maybe you're complaining about a work colleague, or the workload, or the lack of remuneration, not getting enough money for the job you're doing. The mind can easily go into negativity as it's doing that job. But if you catch that and you say, well, the job is the job. If I do it with a negative attitude, I'm suffering, I'm miserable as I do it, and that's clear. If I was to let go of that negativity and just do the job, because I've already committed to it, agreed to do it, signed the contract, whatever. If I just do it in a more neutral way, just be aware of the job and put my efforts into it to do it properly, do it well, and let go of those negative thoughts, well, what would that be like? And if you've practiced like this, you'll probably be aware that you have those experiences where you just do the work, you give up your negativity, and time passes very quickly, even if it's a job you don't really like or you're bored with it. Time can pass very quickly because you're just doing the job for the job's sake. That's an example of bringing up good karma, skillful karma, in a situation where you may tend to be negative or angry or irritated in one way or another. Learning to do that is like a revelation for many people. You can change your whole personal experience in a situation that normally would make you feel angry, negative, unhappy in one way or another. You can change that by simply changing the direction of your karma, changing your intention at that moment, if you recognize that that's what you need to do. So training yourself in this way, investigating the quality of your intention, the kind of intentions that are coming up as you do things, as you speak, as you act in your day, or if you're on your own, just how are you letting your mind go? How is it running? What trains of thought are you holding on to from moment to moment? This is all karma, and it comes back to us. Perhaps the more you practice, the more you'll realize karma is cumulative as well. There's the karma we made in the past, the karma we're making right now, but then there's the fruits of our karma, and they'll keep coming back to us, and they tend to prompt us to go in those same directions more and more. So say you let your mind dwell in negativity, irritation over work or a relationship, or negative about your health, or who you feel you are in your life. These karmic forces become more and more ingrained in our personality, and they'll keep coming up over and over again, maybe get more intense. So many people have the feeling, the experience, as you get older, you lose your temper more easily, more often, or it gets more intense if you haven't worked with your mind, you haven't seen the harm of it. It can get more intense, or greed can get more intense. So when you're young, often you're not so greedy because you haven't experienced the world, but by the time you're 40 or 50 years old, maybe you have a lot more greed and possessiveness for wealth, money, fame, fortune, the things that we feel will bring us peace and happiness in our life. Actually, we can become very greedy for, and that can bring up a lot of conflict with other people, a lot of anxiety within ourselves about how to achieve more of those things that we're greedy for, or hold on to them. So by studying karma, you can see if I just follow the karmic trends I've built up this far in my life and don't make any effort to change them, well, they'll tend to get become deeper, come up more often, more intensely, and cause us more suffering. The teaching on karma has a purpose, and the purpose is to help us understand how suffering arises and how we can reduce it and end it. And it's revealing that to us. But sometimes we have to be quite honest and quite strong with ourselves as we're looking at the kind of karma we're making from day to day, because when it is negative karma, we often don't feel good about it. We don't feel good about ourselves. We don't like to tell other people what we're thinking because we know it's not very good. Actually, the Buddha said sometimes it's helpful to sometimes bring up with other people some of the karma that we are making in our minds. Discuss with them or reveal it, open up to others. So, or if it's come out in our speech, our actions, to make note of it, and sometimes to bring that up with other people, to let them know where you've made mistakes or where things have gone wrong. It's like in the monastery we do that. Like every 2 weeks on the new moon day, full moon day, we have a little practice we call confession of offences. But actually what it means is revealing where we may have unknowingly or knowingly broken one of our rules. And Buddhist monks, we have lots and lots of rules, some very serious, major rules that we don't want to break, some are very minor. But when you transgress one of the rules of a Buddhist monk, some of them, the requirement is when you realize you've transgressed is then to confess or open up to another monk and establish your determination not to break the rule in the future. So sometimes actually opening up is a way of changing your karma, because maybe by talking to a trusted friend about a bad habit or something you did that was unskillful, you become much more mindful of it yourself. You're also seeing them as a witness to what you're doing and what you've realized. And it makes you stronger in your determination to change that karma. So it's a method the Buddha suggested we can do, is to sometimes tell each other where we've made mistakes, gone wrong in our life, open up, but do that to somebody who's trusted, not somebody who's going to use it against you, but open up so that you can become much more aware, mindful of what you've been doing, thinking, saying, and then change the course of some of that karma. Because if you're always in the habit of hiding everything, which tends to be our way, we don't like to admit our faults, where we've gone wrong, we don't like to open up about every thought we've had in our mind. If we're always hiding, suppressing things, we often hide them from ourselves, and we just leave negative habits, negative karmic traits unaddressed, just sitting there, festering like a disease, like a wound. They often get worse when they're unaddressed. And then as many people know, sometimes they explode out of nowhere. And we have all had that experience where you've like, oh, today I got angry and I just don't know where it came from. Suddenly I had a mind explosion and I fell into a rage. You know, some small thing happened or something triggered it, but then this massive explosion happened. You could say that's unaddressed karmic tendencies that maybe have been, sitting in your mind, in your consciousness, coming up as trains of thought, different intentions for maybe many years, for long periods of time, and they finally spill out into your behavior. So rather than letting it get to that point where you have an explosion of unskillful action through body, speech or mind, address it as you're going along. It's a better way to put effort into developing more mindfulness and reflecting on the kind of karma you're making from moment to moment through your day, through body, speech and mind, and changing, making conscious changes, decisions to give up certain ways of thinking and to develop the opposite, the more skillful ways. So the teaching on karma is like a tool that can help us through our life. It's a tool that, like any tool, if you keep using it, you get more skilled with it, and it can really help you and do a lot of good for you to change you for the better. And part of the effects of changing ourselves for the better is we change the world around us for the better, because the more good karma we develop, other people will benefit from that as well. So it's a worthwhile investment. Learn how to use this tool. The Buddha was kind enough to give it to us. He's wise enough to say it's a useful tool for us as human beings. So maybe make use of it. So perhaps for tonight I'll just give you these words of Dhamma and wish you all well.